Well, hello, good morning everybody. Welcome back. Jiu-Jitsu 2000 here today. I'm back and I hope you guys are doing fantastic out there. In this video today, we're going to take a look at a Coleman stove. This is model 425E. This is from March of 1970. Now this stove was given to me by a very good friend of mine, Mama Bird, Arizona. So Mama Bird, thank you for the stove. We're going to take a look at this thing today and see if we can get it going. Now right here are some of the tools that we're going to use today in this video. Starting off with the large crescent wrench. I have some channel locks, I have a spark lighter, a small crescent wrench, a regular flathead screwdriver, and a small number 1 Phillips screwdriver. I have a socket set in the back. This is 1/4 inch drive. I have some nail polish, which is optional. You don't have to have the nail polish. I have a flashlight and some 4/0 steel wool, just a small piece of steel wool. And then of course we got Spider-Man in the back. He's going to be supervising today. So when I look at the stove, the first thing I see is a wobble. So I want to figure out, why is this stove wobbling like this? I'm going to take the grate out of the way. We will pull the tank out for just a second, and I can already tell that the wobble is being created by this back foot back here. It's bent. So it's this foot right here. It's got like a little dent right there. So this needs to be popped back out. It was dented in a little bit, and that's what's creating that little bit of a wobble. So we're going to start there. I'm going to go ahead and prop the stove up on one block of wood just off of that foot down there. And I'm going to use this other block with the dead blow, and I'm going to bang downward and try to bend that foot back out. And here we go. I'm going to make a little bit of noise here for a second. It's not going to take too much. There we go. I think I might have already gotten it straight. So now we check the stove, and we've minimized that wobble. Now most of the operation of the stove has to do with the tank and making sure that the tank is good. If you're looking for a date stamp, most of the time you will find the date stamp on the bottom of the stove, but in our case today it's not there. So we look at the tank itself, and on the bottom here there's 370. That's the date stamp. Now when I shake the tank, I can hear that there's fuel in it. So my first step is to drain the fuel that's in this tank. So I'll take this cap off. We're just going to drain it right here into this little ice cream bucket. And while I'm draining it, I usually smell the fuel and try to identify what kind of fuel they were using. And this is clearly Coleman fuel. So this is white gas. So that's good to know that they were using the correct fuel in the stove. Now I don't know where Mama Bird got this stove from, if they've had it in their family or what, I don't know. So all I'm looking at is what I see. I can see that there's some burn marks here, and there's some burn marks on the stove here, so it indicates that there might have been a fire at some point pretty clearly. I want to take a look at the cap and make sure it's in good condition. This is a 2-piece cap. You can tell by the screw on it. I'm not a big fan of these. They do work, but I think they're a little bit problematic. So we might be using a different cap to get this stove going. Now, since the majority of what makes a stove tick is in this tank, we're going to go ahead and start here. So I'm going to use my little Phillips screwdriver, take this little screw out, and we'll pull this knob off. We're going to set those aside. Make sure you keep all your parts in a good safe area. We're also going to check this lighting lever and see if it's free, if it's able to go up and down, which in our case today the lighting lever is working good. So that's a good sign. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our small crescent wrench and we're going to take off this nut right here. We're going to take the valve portion out. So we're just going to loosen this. There's a packing in there. We don't have to worry about that too much. That packing should be fine. So we're going to just pull this out. All of this. This will bring us to our needle, and we want to make sure that the needle is clean. As you can see, it's a little bit discolored. It has a little bit of blackness to it, so we're going to take the 4/0 steel wool and we're going to just drag this thing back. We don't want to go forward, we just want to drag it backwards, and we're removing carbon off of this needle. You want to make sure that you're really careful on the tip there. We don't want to damage the actual needle itself, or this rod for that matter. So we're just cleaning it, just getting rid of any carbon buildup that might be on there. Be careful when you get near the tip of it, and you can feel the carbon in the steel wool when you run the steel wool on it. But it looks like we've done a pretty good job already and got this fairly clean. So we'll go ahead and set that aside in a nice safe location. Then we'll go to the other end of the generator and we'll take this tip off. And I like these crescent wrenches because they are adjustable and they work pretty good at different sizes and stuff like that. So the whole generator tube or pipe is spinning, so I want to take the tip off, so I'm going to back it up from spinning by using these channel locks. I want to take only the tip off right now. So we'll just get it right there, and there we go. We just needed to break that thread so that we can take this tip off. Don't need the channel locks anymore for now anyway. So we'll take the tip off. And I'm going to take a little bit of paint here, and I'm going to just paint the end that goes into the firebox. That way I know which orientation it is. So let me go ahead and take my channel locks and we'll take the rest of the generator off. If you mar up this pipe, it's not that big of a deal. If you want to protect it, you can put a piece of leather around the pipe and grab the leather with your channel locks, but I really don't mind. If it gets a little marred, it's not that big of a deal to me. So we're just going to remove this from the valve there. And everything looks good. And I got a good indicator right here. I just saw the spring come moving from inside the generator. That is a very good sign. So if that thing moves freely, that's a very good sign. That means that the generator's not completely gummed up. Now I want to take a closer look at this spring and see if there's any carbon buildup, and I don't really see a lot of carbon buildup on here. Now if you do, you can take your steel wool and just kind of spin this thing through the steel wool and clean that bad boy up. But this one's really clean actually. It's not too bad at all. Give it a once over. You can also set this down on your tabletop and use a wire brush if you want to wire brush it. That works good too. But from what I can see, this looks pretty good. We're going to take a look now at the generator pipe itself, and we want to see how clean it is looking through it. Hopefully you can see that right there. It looks fairly clean, so that's a good sign. Looks like the generator is in good shape. If you have any carbon that you can see inside of the generator, you can take like a rifle brush and run it through there. You can also move the spring in and out, and it kind of cleans the inside of that. But honestly, I don't see a need to do much of that. This stuff is in pretty good shape as I can see it here. So it looks like this stove was taken well care of. We don't need to take the lighting lever off. There's not really a need for that. The next step is to try to take this out of the tank. So you can try to use a big crescent wrench. Some people say to not try that, and some people say it's fine. I always think it's okay to give it a try, but don't get too crazy, because if the crescent wrench slips, you could have you could mar up the piece. But in my case, a good sturdy hand, it looks like I was able to break it free fairly easily. If you have trouble breaking it free, you could take this and put this portion upside down in a vise and turn the tank around, and that works pretty good too. But I always try with the crescent wrench first, but it's got to be a large crescent wrench, something that has a lot of leverage on it. So it looks like I'm getting that thing out. So this is going to take us into the tank, and we're going to see what this portion looks like. So there's a look at the valve itself. The main thing that we want to look at is the air/fuel inlet. So when I put this in the up position, you see that that little thing comes and gets in the way. And then when I put the thing down, look at that, it gets out of the way. So when the lighting lever is up, we need that to be protruding through. That means that we're going to be bringing air from here into the generator, and then once we get the stove primed, we turn this lighting lever down and it gets that thing out of the way, and it allows liquid fuel to go up and feed through the generator. So from what I can see already right now, this looks pretty good, but I am going to take it apart just for good measure, just to make sure that everything looks okay. You really don't have to, because I've already determined that it looks okay. But what I'm looking for is this needle, and I want to see the condition of it. How clean is it? And it's very clean. I also want to make sure that it clearly goes in and out here. So main thing that I'm concerned about is the air can go from this hole through here. So if you take your little rag, you clean this and you block the bottom end and you blow through here, you should get air coming out of here. Yep, and that works. I got air coming out of there. So now I'll take some nail polish and I'll put it only on the threads here. You don't have to do this. In fact, Coleman themselves says that this isn't necessary, but it's something that I do. It makes me feel good. I feel like it helps tighten up all the air gaps and stuff in the system. I know that there's other people out there that think that it's a placebo, and they're probably right about that. It probably doesn't do anything. So at this point, we know that everything is working on this piece here. So there's a packing inside of here, so we don't want to mess with this nut unless you have fuel leaking out of your lighting lever. You can tighten this nut a little bit. It'll tighten against that packing, and it could seal up any liquid leaks that you have coming out of there. But I don't have anything like that happening, so I'm going to go ahead and put this back in the tank at this point. There's not really a need to do anything more. So my favorite thing is fingernail polish on the threads. I feel like it makes the air harder to escape or something like that. These are tapered fittings, and technically you don't even need this, but I do it because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like it helps. So now I'm going to spin this around, and when we end, we want the lighting lever here on the left like that. We want that kind of an orientation. This does not have to be like super gorilla tight. I see people all the time tightening these things way too much. So right there, I'm getting it fairly tight, so I'm just going to spin this around until the lighting lever is over here. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. Something like that that's all we need right there. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and get our generator back. Remember, we had the glue or the paint on the tip, so we know which end the tip goes on. I'm going to go ahead and put that together. So I'm going to put some paint on those threads on the end of that generator. if you're going to put paint anywhere, this is probably the best area to put it, because it just fills the spaces between the threads. So if you ever have flames like shooting out of this area, make sure that you check this tip and tighten it, or put some nail polish on it. I don't ever have my stoves leak there, and that's probably why, because I put paint on it. So we will put that on. We'll get that threaded. And everything's looking good so far. We'll do the same thing here. We'll put some paint on that. Make sure that you don't get any paint on the inside of the generator. We don't want that. That'll clog us up. So it's only going on the threads. So now we'll insert the generator right there. There we go. Got the thread started. Now we'll just tighten it up a little bit. Don't think we'll need the channel locks for this one, because as we tighten this tip here, it's going to tighten the whole thing. So just kind of tighten that all in there together. This does not have to be super tight. Just snug it up until it kind of stops spinning. Something like that. We're almost there. There we go. Getting a little bit of resistance, so that's about all we need. From here, we're going to carefully insert this needle back into the center of the generator, and then when these threads hit, we'll go ahead and start threading. And I am going to put a little bit of polish right around these outside threads here. Don't put it on these inside valve threads, then your valve won't turn. Something like that looks good. Let's go ahead and start turning the valve. We'll start here. This nut has a packing inside of it, so the amount of tightness that we want to make this is based on that packing. Okay, so to test it, we'll take the knob and we'll just open and close this valve, and then if it feels loose, we'll tighten it a little bit more. It'll go up against that packing and it'll tighten it a little bit more. And check the knob. Tighten it just a little more. What you want to do is you want to compress that packing just enough around that valve where you have a tiny bit of resistance. Not a ton of resistance, just a little bit. Now, if before you took the stove apart, if you had any kind of fuel leaking around this area or out this area right here, I'll use this as a pointer. If you had any fuel leaking around here or even around the threads, you would want to tighten this nut just a little bit, and it might compress that packing and get rid of your leak. So in our case, we're just being patient, taking our time. We're up against the packing now, and that resistance right there that I'm feeling, that feels good. So I'm going to go ahead and take my little screw here that holds the knob on, and we'll put that back into place. And we're almost done with this tank. So it's working out pretty good, actually. Now we want to look at the pump. This is probably the most important part of the stove. So there's this little U-clip. We're just going to grab that on one side and kind of flop it over, taking this little clip off. That's what that little clip looks like. And before we put this clip back on, I always like to take like my channel locks and go fairly large. And I like to squeeze this back down. I like to compress this back down just a little bit so it has good retention when you put the pump back in. So we're going to go ahead and turn this counterclockwise, and then we'll pull this pump out. We want to look and take a look at our pump cup, see what kind of condition the cup itself is in. This one is a little bit dry, not bad, but we're going to take some oil and we're going to just lightly oil the pump cup there. We want that pump cup to be saturated with oil. You want it to be nice and flexible and nice and subtle. So everything's looking good. We can also take the air stem out if we wish. This just turns counterclockwise. We want to look at the air stem. What this air stem does is when you tighten this, it allows the air to go in but not come back out. And then when this is out of the way or loosened, what prevents the air from coming out is the check valve. So you see down inside of there, there's that little brass fitting. That's a check valve. Try not to get a big screwdriver down in there, because you can damage that up pretty bad. So don't want to do that. I'm also looking at the side of the pump housing where the pump cup rides, and I'm looking for any scratches or anything like that. And so far the surface looks good. And here is what the check valve tool looks like. You got a couple different sizes. So what you want to do is you want to find the one that has the same threads as the air stem. So we need this one to go down inside. We're going to stab it right down in there, right into the center of the check valve. And we'll thread that in. This is the best way to remove these check valves. Now on the tool itself, you got these little ears. Kind of looks like a flathead screwdriver in a way. We'll just stick that over the stem or over the stud here, and then we'll kind of twist it into place. You'll feel it, it'll drop down into position. Put your washer on there and then your little nut, and tighten this nut on top of the check valve tool, and that just gets everything nice and tight so it's one unit. Then we'll take our large crescent wrench and we'll just break this thing loose. There we go. Didn't take too much. Then we'll pull this check valve out. This is a good way of being able to pull out your check valve. So from here, rag is our friend. This piece is very important on these stoves. Let's go ahead and take the check valve off of the tool here for a second. So we'll just unthread it. I want to look at the check valve, and what you want to make sure of is that little ball, you can hear that ball dancing around. And we also want to clean the end of it here and try to blow air through it. And I can't blow air through it once the ball's in the right position. So that's good. We want air to go this way, but not this way. It's a one-way valve. So it looks like the check valve is in good condition. So we'll go ahead and just put it back on the tool there. And we're going to go ahead and put this check valve back in. But before we do that, I'm just going to stick my pinky down in there and feel, make sure that there's no rough spots or scratches or anything like that, like I mentioned earlier. And I don't feel anything. So we're going to use our paint on the check valve threads. And so we'll just insert the check valve right inside of here with our tool. We'll start threading it into place. Doesn't need to be gorilla tight, just snug it up a little bit, and that's really all you need right there. Now you can remove the nut. And you can take off the washer, the main part of the tool itself, and then unthread the rest of the check valve tool. So now we know that our check valve is in good condition. We didn't really need to do all that, but I like to do it anyway because I have the tool and I have the ability. It's right here in front of me, not that big of a deal, so I went ahead and did it. We can put the air stem back in, and we'll just shoot it down until it gets inside the middle of the check valve, like we're hitting a bullseye down there. I don't know if you can see that. You just want to aim it right down in the middle down there, like you're trying to be Robin Hood or something. Get that bullseye and then give it a couple twists, and you'll notice that the air stem is now kind of floating. So at this point, if you have a clean pump, you can put your oiled pump cup in right around that air stem, and then just make sure everything feels good. Don't force anything. I kind of twist it as I go, and it kind of twists into place. And then once you get that, I like to put a drop or two of oil in there, not too much, and then tighten that down. And then of course we can put this piece back on. So you need that little hole on the top, so you got to line up these little sides, remember. So now we'll take our little keeper, this piece here, we'll grab one side, and then we'll kind of stretch it around to the other side, and then we'll just pop it into position. I didn't quite get it yet. Needle nose works pretty good for this, but I have a pair of channel locks right here. I'm going to try that. There we go. The pump is all back together. Everything's clean. Clean this rod. Everything's moving freely. It looks like we're almost there. Okay, I've got my funnel. I have a coffee filter I'm going to stuff down in there. That's going to guarantee that I'm putting nice clean fuel in the stove. I'm going to go ahead and use this old fuel that they had. This was just white gas. I'm going to put that back in. And of course, as you can see, I'm running it through that little coffee filter, making sure that it's as clean as it could be. I'm going to finish it off with some gasoline, and it's okay to mix these fuels. It's no problem. I've been doing it for a long time. This is low octane gasoline. We're just going to put that in there. It goes right through the filter as well. Coffee filters I've found work very good for filtering fuel. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this cap with the standard, not a two-piece cap. I don't care for these. You can replace the seals in them, but I'm just going to replace the cap. Okay, so I have another cap here. I'm going to use one of those 3/4 washers. Just kind of smashing that washer down in there. And these work pretty good as a temporary solution. Maybe if you're going to go camping over the weekend or something, they work pretty good. I wouldn't use this trick long term, but they work good for a pinch. So we got that nice and tight. We'll go ahead and pump this up. We'll give it about 30 pumps. Somewhere in there. Turn this air stem. So now we'll go ahead and put the tank on the stove. We want to make sure that this butterfly valve on the side is closed before we light this. Now I'm noticing that this tank doesn't want to fit close up against the stove. I don't like that, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to lift this handle, put it in the up position. That'll get the tank a little bit closer to the stove. And yeah, that looks like it's going to sit a lot better. Let's go ahead and turn the lighting lever up. We are now pressurized, so we're going to open the valve here. We're going to introduce a little bit to the system and check and see if we can get it lit. There we go. We got that burner lit. We'll just let this burn for a little bit until we start seeing those blue flames. And then once we see those blue flames, we can turn this lighting lever down. We'll see a little bit more orange flames and stuff, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and turn this baby on. And looks like it's working okay. If you want to light the secondary burner, we can open that butterfly over here and light that one as well. It looks like we need more pressure in the system, so we'll just kind of hold all this. And I'll pump it up a little bit more. Looks Looks like that's working pretty good. Tighten that air stem back down. And it looks like the stove is working pretty good. I'm opening this butterfly all the way. You can control the flames by this valve. I'm not seeing any leaks or anything in this area anywhere, so that's good. Looks like things are working as they should. We'll go ahead and turn that off. And now that leaves us with our main burner, and as you can see, it's working absolutely fantastic. We're going to give it 32 ounces of water, and we'll do a quick boil test here. This is room temperature water. We'll bring the grate down. I don't think I need the wings out, so let's go ahead and set that on. We'll turn this burner up. We'll get our timer started. We'll see how long it takes to boil 32 ounces of water. There we are, 4:15, but I'm waiting on a heavy rolling boil. So yeah, we're pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the time. 4 minutes and 20 seconds. We got to a heavy rolling boil. So that worked out pretty good. Okay, so the auxiliary is going to go down to a simmer, just a very light simmer. And that's very easy to adjust. As you can see, the auxiliary is doing great. The main burner, we're going to use this dial, and we're just going to take a look at the flame control that we get out of this stove and see how it looks. So far so good. Yeah, it's looking really nice. Yeah, you got a lot of flame control there. It looks really good. You can bring that thing down. The lower you go on the main burner, the lower the auxiliary goes. So that is working very good. Let's go ahead and shut off the auxiliary, and let's go down a little bit more on the main burner. And now let's open it back up. Yeah, that stove is working good. Working really well. Not that hard to fix. And this is something that was made in 1970. There's just something about the sound of a Coleman stove, the way those burners operate, that brings back so many childhood memories. Pancakes and bacon and eggs out in the woods when I was a kid with my family. Beautiful memories. Maybe that's why I love working on these stoves so much, because it brings back such good childhood memories. Well, my final thoughts are very simple. This stove is working good. It didn't take a lot to get it going. I just went through it. I hope that this video helped you guys out. It did a good job boiling the water, 4 minutes and 20 seconds. That's fantastic for a rolling boil with room temperature water not covered. I think it performed very well. This stove is ready for a lot more life. This is a stove that was made in March of 1970, and here we go. You know, it's running good. The reason I had the sockets and the big flathead was just in case I needed to get into the burners, which is pretty rare. There's a couple screws here on the side, and there's a 7/16 nut on the bottom. That removes the burner assembly, but I didn't need to do that. The stove, as you can see, is working fine. Sometimes you'll get critters, you know, spiders and those mud daubers will get in there and they'll make their little nests, and it'll mess up the air to fuel vapor ratio. And so sometimes when that happens, you need to get in there and clean that stuff out. But in our case, everything's working fine. I really enjoyed working on it, and I'm happy that it's working good. The cap, those two-piece caps are kind of dangerous in my opinion. Some people might say otherwise, but I don't prefer them. I like these flat top caps. I think they're better. But with all that being said, folks, I want to say thank you guys for joining me today on this video, repairing a Coleman 425E March 1970. This thing is a vintage stove. It's a classic, and it's working as it should. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to leave your comments down below. Like this video, share this video. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.